Good morning and welcome to today's talk. And this is our third or fourth in this series of webinars. And today we are talking about DRTV, TV advertising, and we're really talking about best practices for fundraisers. So hopefully you'll find this a very interesting and inspiring talk. Oops, sorry, just trying to get my next slide through. It's not moving forward. Oh, there we go. So before we get into the heart of it, let me just introduce us and say a couple of rules. Being, so we're going to go through the presentation this morning, and if you have any questions, and please, any questions or anything, any observations that you want to point out, then drop it in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll try and share my screen and get back to that later on. We should be talking for about 20-25 minutes, and we'll have a couple of minutes at the end for any questions you might have. So without further ado, let me introduce the speakers today. I'm John Eversley, Managing Director here at WP&C, and I'll be joined this morning for the talk by Maria Phillips. Many of you will know Maria, and who's our Director of Film and TV. And I think between us, we've got, well, actually, we worked together for more years than either of us would well, we certainly will admit openly. And
today, John had hair.
And a dark beard. So yes, so we've worked together for quite a while, and we've covered a lot of TV in that time. And so what I'm really delighted to share today is our experience, some of our views, some of our thoughts, our observations, which will help fundraisers and people some of our clients and people who we're not working with yet. And hopefully this will, as I say, inspire you to have a look at your DRTV, or to look at introducing DRTV if you don't already work with it, and improving it if you currently do. So as I say, there's loads of expertise, loads of experience, and we'll be peppering some of those thoughts in the next few slides. If I start, first of all, by saying that it was really interesting, because when I talked to some clients about this webinar, one of the things that was coming up, seemed to be coming through, was actually that's quite timely, because we're all facing some quite difficult challenges right now. There's lots of pressure on budgets, there's lots of pressure on making sure our cost balance and costs work. And it's incumbent upon all of us to look for greater efficiency, which means we're looking to maximize our ROI. So what's really interesting is that, and it's never gone away, there's always been the balance and the argument between, do we seek volume or do we seek value? And how do we get the right balance in order to balance our ROI? TV is a fundamental part of that, because it's an enabler to volume. It absolutely does have a big reach, but also it does have a slightly greater cost. So trying to make sure you balance that is one of the key things. And hopefully some of what we say this morning will help us cover that off. So as I said, having said that, today is really not about looking at the margins, looking at the cost control. It's not really about managing your budget. What we're trying to do is share our experience of lots of different aspects of creating DRTV, from the planning through to the comms planning, through to the creative execution, and things that you might bring to bear in order to help. So if you're looking to some of the questions that you've probably been asking amongst your teams and in your corridors and boardrooms, probably looking at your TV commercial now, if you have an ad, and say, well, actually, how can I get a bit more out of that? How can I squeeze it a bit further? Do I really need a new one? And for those of you who are not currently in TV, you're probably still asking the question of, actually, I'd love to be on TV, but I don't have the budget for it. Will it actually help? Will it add to my program? Will it bring in the new donors that I'm looking for at sufficient quality? And isn't it really expensive anyway? So hopefully we'll allay some of those thoughts as we go forward. But I really want to kick off this morning by, if any of you joined us at last week's talk, you'll know that we had a whole session around understanding your donors. And I think that's really key part of this, and before I hand over to Maria to talk about some of the creative bits, I really wanted to share this thought, which was, or remind people of this thought, which was, and so if you have a TV ad, actually any fundraising comms, but particularly TV, one of the best ways to make sure that you are really efficient with that ad is to look at what your donors will say about it. And to do that, there's lots of tools around pre-testing, around looking at your donors' thoughts around the research for a new proposition or new ad. So putting it into research before you run it is a really good way of making sure that your donors, your target audience, absolutely understand the story, that you then, because you'll have done lots of research beforehand, so you have lots of insight around your donors, so you know what those triggers are, you know what those drivers are, and the ad tries to encapsulate all of that thinking and put it into a 30, 60, 90-second ad that will address those concerns. And so putting it into research is one way of making sure that you tick all those boxes, and it absolutely helps to, and that piece of activity will reduce your risk. But one of the things that you really do need to think about, top tip here, is making sure that the ad, sometimes we're in danger of making the ad so strong that it absolutely goes too far and it makes people feel absolutely guilty, or there's some sort of defensive reaction, which is beyond the point of responding. You do not want to go that far, but you need to come back far enough to make sure that the ad hits the sweet spot and it generates all of that lovely response that we're looking for. Next point, over to you, Maria.
Thank you very much, John. So I guess I'm going to be sharing a few slides with you that are around best practice from the sort of creative and production point of view, which is a slightly unusual thing for a creative to do, because often we wax lyrical about the creativity and everything. But, you know, DRTV has to be effective and it has to give you a really strong ROI. So I'm very much focused on that today. So the first thing I would say is, and John touched on this earlier, if you do have an existing ad that has taken you quite a while to develop and to shoot, and it's been on air and you've got learnings, don't necessarily, and if you're not getting the results quite the results you want now, or it's beginning to tire, don't just think straight away, oh, I must do a brand new ad with a new shoot. There are some things that we would suggest you try before you do that and go for a new ad with a new proposition. And we found all three of these to be really successful. So a fairly simple, straightforward thing to do is to turn what is basically an RG advert into a cash appeal. Now there are, from an ROI point of view, cash works really well at certain times of year, and I'm talking specifically about Christmas here. Very strong for you, and we're going to come on to that a little bit later. But it's really quite hard at the minute to get RG ads working incredibly strongly because of the cost of living and everything. People don't necessarily want to commit. So I would suggest that you at least try and do some fairly simple changes, captions, voiceover, looking at the proposition to tweak it and turn it into a cash appeal. Another option is to cut down your longer ads into a shorter ad, and that's something that we're pursuing at the moment with one of our charity clients. We like to start long, where, you know, we are direct marketers and we know, you know, longer usually works better. But if you've got a 90-second ad that isn't working quite as well as it has been, then definitely consider cutting it down into a 60, even as an RG ask. You do have to be quite disciplined about it. You have to choose exactly which are the elements of the messaging that can go. And I often advise on that, but you can see some really strong results from a 60, because obviously from a media point of view, it's much more economic and it's an easier thing to get the spots. And then the final one I've sort of introduced because we did it during the pandemic and it did really well. That we're not going through a pandemic now, but you may have an incident where you have a really urgent topical fundraising message. And if you do, what you could do is consider top and tailing an ad that you have already, say a 60-second ad, turning it into a 90-second conversely, but having a recording at the front, a really strong appeal message as to why you need to watch this ad now, why you need to respond, and again at the end. And you know, during the virus, we did that because obviously funds were down for charities, or they were facing lots of challenges, and it really help response. It helped people sit up and take a note. So if you've got a shortfall in income or a huge need or a huge appeal, just think about starting the ad and ending the ad with it, because it really does help the ad to perform better. Thank you, John.
Sorry,
it's not moving on yet.
Okay,
right. Okay, so having done all that, and you've gone through it very diligently, then okay, you do want to create a new ad. You absolutely do, and it may be that you've never been on TV before, and you want to do an exciting new DRTV advert that's going to work brilliantly. Before you go off and start thinking about, wow, we're going to have to shoot this ad, we're going to have to find the case studies, we're going to have to get actors, etc., etc. Those of you who've worked with me know that this is something that I am rather bizarrely passionate about, which is recycling and repurposing and refreshing existing footage. Why am I excited about that? The reason is because shoots can be, quite challenging. You work very hard to get your shots, and you don't get too many shots because you just don't. Whereas if you have strong existing footage, you have a huge bank of footage that you can choose and find the best footage from very different sources. So you're actually starting with some really powerful starting points. And although it's about recycling and repurposing, it doesn't mean it can't be a brand new idea, because that's what creative people are all about. How can we take this footage and create something really strong and new and fresh? So, that's our job, to work with you to get that. And, if you haven't done DRTV before, or you don't have much in the way of DRTV assets, check out, just dig deep, event films of the past, social assets, they're all everywhere, aren't they? Vlogs from the field produce some fantastic sort of eyewitness accounts of what the people that we help are going through. So these are all really useful assets. They can be a little bit rough and ready. But I'm actually quite a fan of rough and ready. I think it adds to the authenticity and the urgency and that sense of being in the moment. And we did this quite a lot in the old days with MSF, and it worked incredibly well. It really put your audience right in the middle of the action and the work that was going on, and it was very successful. And also, don't be precious. If you're missing some footage or a shot, go to Getty or a news media. They're pretty reasonable prices, and it means that you then don't have to go and shoot just a certain element of it. Thank you, John. Next one. However, there probably will be a shoot at some point. You need to, you got it. There probably will be a shoot, and I love it as a creative. It's the most fun part of it. But shoots are, they're not the cheapest things. You've got to pay for your crew, and sometimes you have to organise hotels, etc., etc., etc. A lot of shoots tend to be around the 2-day or the 3-day mark in the UK, much longer overseas. But can you actually get away with a 1-day shoot, which will obviously really help your costs? Now, it can be done. We've done it for a couple of our charity clients. It can be quite, what's the word? Stressful is the wrong word. It really has to be planned ahead, but it is possible. So what I would say it's about is really thinking about it before your shoot. So say, for example, you have an ad that's got 3 or 4 different locations with different actors or different people. You can actually choose one location, which is what we've had a lot of success at doing, and basically styling each of the rooms differently. So you might have something going on in the kitchen, something else going on in the living room, different actors, different scenarios. They feel like very different settings, but you've done it in one location, and that's helped hugely with the cost. So think about that. Also think about the key decision makers, whoever they are at your organisation. They absolutely have to buy into every single bit of the decision before you go to the shoots. You can't have it happen at the shoots for changes, etc. Something that I'm very keen on is, you may have a storyboard and it's all beautiful and your agency has sold it into you, but get it down as a shot list as well, because directors generally don't just want to shoot a storyboard, they want to do more shots, they want to explore, which is fantastic. That's what they're about. But agree it in advance and don't let anybody digress from it. Because as I said, you'll see I say at the end, you can't go over time. If you go over time, it's just not worth doing the 1-day shoot, because you're going to go into 1.5 or two times overtime. On the day itself, we always like to, on longer shoots, we always like to get some fantastic stills of the shoot that we can use and social assets for other media. But today, of all days, if it's just a one-day shoot, please prioritise DRTV over everything else if it's another one day. If you think the filming isn't going quite right, I would say keep quiet until there's a natural break and then contribute. If you've got a really good producer, which is essential, they will always make sure there are regular breaks in filming, and they will come and chat to you and the creators and the agency and say, okay, what isn't working for you? What is? Can we move on now? But if we constantly interrupt the filming, and A, it pisses the director off, but B, it just lengthens the whole thing out a long time. Remember, my creative director, Bob Nash, asked me to remind everybody of this because he does a lot of this. Lip sync takes a heck of a lot longer to film because obviously people are talking to camera. And I can say I've worked with children's charities, I've worked with animals charity. I love children, I love animals, but they are completely, let's say, unreliable. So I really wouldn't go for a one-day shoot with children and animals because you need time to get those great shots. And yes, remember that if you're going to go way over time, then it's actually going to be quite costly, and you may be best to go back to a 2-day shoot. But I'm really a great advocate of saying if you plan ahead, you really can, and it's a fairly simple, straightforward shoot. You can absolutely do it in a day. Thank you. How are we doing for time, John? Am I rattling on, or am I...
Keep going.
Okay, voiceovers. So we all have to do voiceovers, and they're normally booked by the hour. That's the way the studios work. But I've noticed they rarely take that long. If you get a really good voiceover artist or actor, it's often done in 20 minutes or half an hour or something like that, you know, particularly if it's not too long a script. So they then disappear off, having only spent half the time there. Don't let them do that. Think in advance. Get your agency to do a Christmas version of the script, for example, just in case you would want to produce a Christmas ad. There could be a cash ask that you could do as opposed to an RG. You could ask for different prompts, different calls to actions, etc. Think ahead and think what you might want to do with this ad if it was a great success, or even what would we do if this ad wasn't quite working as well as we'd hope? Well, we could turn it into a cash appeal. So just get some scripts done in advance and get them recorded. You don't have to edit, you don't have to do anything with them, but you've got them, and that saves a lot of time rather than getting the voiceover artist back again, and you may not be able to get the same one, etc. And obviously you've got the cost of the new session. And also something that I personally like is get them to record a nice thank you message for you, and you can use that anywhere. You know, you could use it in social media, you could use it on the welcome journey, you could use it as a callback, particularly if you use a well-known artiste, which, you know, we sometimes do. So just think about that. But the only thing I would say is it doesn't happen very often because they're jolly nice people generally, but if they're faced with 20 different phone numbers, they may get a little bit fed up. So it's a question of balance. Because you want them back again. Next, please. Right, music. Very, very keen on some element of music in our ads because we know that they add a lot of emotion and they really do help with response. And actually, interestingly, I meant to mention this on the first slide, but actually we found just changing a piece of music on an existing ad can really up response, which is extraordinary, really. But it just shows the power of music. So please don't think you don't have the budget. You don't have the budget, or you don't have enough budget, or you don't even know where to begin. There are ways of doing it. So one of the nicest ways, and it doesn't happen, unfortunately, with every client and every advert, but you might be able to negotiate a well-known song or a well-known artiste to do it at a really, really good rate if they are an advocate of your cause. And a very topical example of that today is that we've just put out a new TV ad for NHS Charities Together, and lovely Mick Hucknall from Simply Red allowed us to use his song as I can't say how much, but it was extremely good. Good deal for us. So don't be afraid of asking. You never know. You might just be able to do that, and that's really helpful. However, if you're going to go down where you're not going to get that sort of yes, we'll do it for free, or we'll do it kind of at cost or whatever, you do need to go through quite a long process from the writers, the owners, the publishers. So copyright is 70 years from the composer's death. Yeah, so it's still a while, or it's 70 years from the first published recordings. So it takes a while to get approvals. It really, really does. I mean, one of our Favourite clients, the Salvation Army. We kind of often get around that because we do a lot of Christmas ads, and we use carols that are not in copyright any longer. And also the lovely, wonderful Salvation Army band will often record the music for us. So that is a very cost-effective way of getting some really powerful music in. But then, well, of course, we don't all have our own bands to work with. But I would say, think about budding composers. So one of our clients, Plan, we use a fantastic composer up and coming who used to work at Plan, and gives us a great deal and does wonderful, wonderful music. If not, library music, there are some great library audio. I think it's Audio Network is a fantastic place to go and get it, and it's all affordable. And funnily enough, there are lots of pieces of music there that you think they've written that almost for a DRTV advert. It kind of takes a similar journey, so that can be really cost effective too. John.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Maria. So I think what you've had over the last 10 or 15 minutes is a series of thoughts around all the components, all the assets, how you create the ad, or how you can do it in a savvy manner. But I think, just to remind everyone, I don't think any self-respecting DRTV presentation should be complete without talking about social media and video, because this really is about how you manage to stretch that content that you've gathered, that you've sweated over, that you've planned your one-day shoots for, or got some music together, you've got the best voiceover artists and directed them well. You've got all that together. Then the next thing to do is, once the ad is launched, you want to get on social. So there are some great opportunities here. You can see from this chart, which just sums up some research that was done recently. Half of our audience, half the time our audience are watching TV, but another chunk of that time they're looking at social media, they're looking at online video, probably bod and VOD. So there is a real opportunity, almost as much as there is on TV, to reach our audience. And so one of the things we've been doing is a load of cut downs, whether it's 10, 15-second films based on the ads that we've produced, and we've seen this work quite successfully on both Facebook and Insta. I think we're testing TikTok, and we're looking at other YouTube and other areas shortly. So I would urge you to think, when you're putting your ads together, whilst the focus is on TV, and I would say that before Maria shouts at me, whilst the focus is on TV, undeservedly TV, you also ought to have at the back of your mind, how might you turn that into the film later to go on social, to have a fully integrated campaign. So those are all the key components, and we're quickly running out of time, but what I really wanted to do was share one last thought with you, which was about Christmas. So, we cannot forget Christmas. And if you haven't already started planning your Christmas campaigns, then you really need to start now. And if TV is not part of that, then you should give it a second thought. And if it is part of that, if it is in your plans, then maybe we can help you think about how you can refine that and get the most out of it. Because as we all know, it's the most responsive time of the year. And whilst last year we had the World Cup and had other sort of interruptions, this year we should have a nice, clean run at our audience for Christmas. And so I think there'll be a lot of TV out there. There'll be a lot of share of wallet. There'll be a lot of noise, but also I think that despite the economy, I think there'll be a fair amount of receptive. The audience will be quite receptive towards it. So we're anticipating some strong Christmas appeals this year. Probably cash. It's mostly to, as Maria said earlier on, about converting RG to cash, but cash works really well at Christmas. You can get some slightly higher values around. People have a propensity to give it a higher value at that time. And if you're worried about the cost and the length, then yep, 60s are probably the optimum to get at the start of your Christmas campaign. But we've also found through working with other clients, combination of 60s at the start and 30s later can be a really effective, cost-effective way of reaching our targets in the run-up to the 24th of December and beyond. So, so Christmas, you really need to be thinking about that. But hey, from a creative point of view,
yeah,
Maria.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of creating Christmas DRTV, because it really is the best shot at getting really great response. And it's just a perfect time of year to be going out there and asking. But you know, I just want to leave you with 3 starting points for yourselves to think about. So if you've got a good generic, let's say RG, or cash DRTV advert that's worked well throughout the year, consider doing a very simple version of it that might be a cut down. It might be turning RG to cash, new voiceover, some Christmas call to action. Now, it doesn't necessarily even need to have a Christmas proposition at its heart. We found just calling something a special Christmas appeal, give a Christmas gift, can actually really help response. It's just making that Christmas connection, and of course seasonal graphics help. So that is a good starting point. Just adapt an existing ad into a Christmas version. However, you might have some really strong Christmas or winter footage already. Now, if you thought ahead, you might have done like we occasionally do, which is we film an ad in summer. Say we did this for a children's hospice, and we added Christmas, we shot it, and then we added some Christmas decorations around, so we had the footage. Should we then want to do a Christmas version, did very well. Or maybe you've got something like, well, the Salvation Army did themselves, which was basically, I think it was January or February, there was a really, really bad snowstorm in London. They got out there, they shot on the streets, they shooted homeless people. It was actually some actors, because homeless people notoriously do not want to be on TV, but got some fantastic footage. And then that helped us create an ad 9 months later, which is still very successful, which was all about In From the Cold. So, you know, if you've got that footage, that's even better, even better. And then the final point I would say is, do you have a really successful Christmas appeal mailing or inserts? Do think about, have a look at it and think, can we take that proposition or the case studies or some of the key elements, and can we create a new way to bring it to life for DRTV? And that's how we started doing DRTV many, many, many years ago. We looked at direct mail, we looked at print, and we took some of the strong elements from that. And actually, it's a very proven and successful way. So obviously, I would say, we'd love to talk to you about it if you've got that, or any of the things that we talked about today. We'd be really happy to advise and give some direction. And over that seamlessly to John Eversley.
Yes, and if it's advice you're looking for, there's a running in parallel with this series of webinars, we've been offering clients, well, not just clients, but for fundraisers in particular, we've been offering a 30-minute advice sort of session. You can see just click on the QR code, just click online or snap the QR code, and that'll take you straight through to the page on the website where you just collect some details. So if you're looking to talk to one of the team around TV, Maria's there. Other aspects of creative, then Bob will be around for you, or if it's digital, we have Phil, or digital marketing, etc. So whatever your challenge, concern is, then we might be able to help you. Please drop us a line and let us know some details, and we'll come back to you. And time is getting on, so I just wanted to finish really by saying next week is the last of this week's series. And Phil and Eamon will be talking about digital marketing, and in particular, digital marketing cost effectively for fundraisers. So working on the budget, and that's next Wednesday, the 12th at 9:30. So hopefully we will see you then. It's now, 10 o'clock? It's 10 o'clock. We've still got time for a couple of questions. I think some people will be jumping off to get to the 10 o'clock meetings, but if anyone has any questions they want to answer, please do, questions they want to ask that we can answer, then yeah, I think time's probably running on and people are moving. So please get in touch with me. Beverly's already been in touch, so I will contact you directly, Beverly. Anyone else has any concerns, questions, looking for advice, please, John Eversley, john.eversley@wpnc.agency. Most of you know me anyway, so yeah, look forward to getting your notes. All that remains really is to say thank you very much, Maria, for this morning, and thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week and see you again soon.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Have
Bye.
a good day. Thanks. Bye.